Welcome to our podcast, Leading Past Limits. We share lessons learned from the hard-won experience of mission-driven leaders so that you expand your horizons as a leader that places service before self. I'm Kumar Kibble, a leadership coach and the principal at GuideQuest. I've been passionate about developing leaders since graduating from West Point more than 30 years ago, and have led high-performing teams as a military officer, special agent, diplomat, government, and corporate executive. Now I partner with leaders and teams as a coach to help unlock their potential and maximize their impact. In this first season, join me in learning from entrepreneurs, CEOs, Army generals, police chiefs, war heroes, thought leaders, and more. Be sure to subscribe and don't miss out on lessons learned from the real world School of Hard Knocks. Our guest today is Brigadier General Patrick Huston, the Assistant Judge Advocate General for Military Law and Operations in the Pentagon. His responsibilities include a focus on the legal and ethical development and use of artificial intelligence, autonomous weapons, cybersecurity, and other emerging technologies. He also supports diversity and inclusion initiatives as part of talent management for the JAG Corps, one of the world's largest legal organizations. General Huston started his military career as an Army Ranger and helicopter pilot in Europe. He then attended law school and became a military prosecutor. He's completed 5 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan and has been the staff judge advocate of 3 major organizations, including the Joint Special Operations Command, or JSOC. He previously served as the commanding general of the Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School, the federal government's only ABA-accredited law school, and he supervised the Army's Global Trial Defense Service. Some additional background, and perhaps most important to his career development, we were in the same company for 4 years at West Point, so he could directly observe what not to do in his growth as a leader. Pat, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kumar. It's fantastic to see you again. It's great to be here.
So let's start with what motivated you to go to West Point?
I was just too young to really make a decision for myself. I read a book about West Point called The West Point Story when I was in junior high. And I got this image in my mind that that's what I wanted to do. That's where I wanted to go. And with a singular focus, I just decided to pursue that and ended up going there.
West Point has been affectionately described as a $250,000 education shoved up one's bottom a nickel at a time. So what was the toughest
challenge? Like a penny at a time to me.
What was the toughest challenge you faced while you were there?
I was so excited to go there. I was ready for it. I was expecting like intense difficulty. And there certainly was that, but it was all tolerable. What I didn't really anticipate was just the chronic nature of it, like how over the length of time of that first difficult year and 4 years, just how the duration would really get to you. Just the marathon nature of the difficulty, that was just surprising to me. I was expecting more intense, acute pain.
Yeah, I think for me it was kind of a psychological in the sense of there's so many talented people that are around you, and just realizing that I wasn't as great as I thought I was.
Well, we all had that realization, Kumar.
What else did you learn about yourself there? You talk about the chronic thing, but what did you learn about yourself personally in going through that experience?
For me, I learned about the fact that there were a lot of different people from around the country. We all go to our high schools wherever we're from. I was from Southern California, where I was from. I knew that. But when you go to college with people from all 50 states, and you realize there are a lot of different people with a lot of different backgrounds, and that the world's a different place than your hometown in most cases.
Yeah, I felt that as well, experienced that as well. What they describe West Point as a leadership laboratory. We have the opportunity to kind of practice, learn concepts and principles, and practice and apply them in various assignments as cadets. What was your most important takeaway about leading others?
Just the difficulty of it. I will say that, like you, I didn't find it to be an enjoyable experience for the entire 4 years. You gave your coin analogy there, and I completely agree with it. But the truth is, I have to give it credit. I really do think they do a good job of training you on leadership, because that really is a focus there. And that focus I find to be pretty rare. Not a lot of places really focus on the leadership aspects of one's job. I know that leadership is sort of central to a military officer's job, but the truth is leadership is kind of permeates society, or the need for leadership permeates society, but not all other professions do it that well. And so I think that the quality of the training that we got was very good.
I like your point in terms of just how it extends beyond the military, and because leadership is not just about formal authority. It's about, I like to say, also informal influence that comes from character and credibility and the trust that one inspires in another.
On that
Yeah,
point, I've got to
yeah,
say, I think we have it much easier in the military because of the formal authority, because of the rank structure. It's so hierarchical and clear that leadership is easier in some regards in the military than it is elsewhere, where it's a less formal structure.
yeah. Well, so one of the interesting things is, right, at Ranger School, you strip off the rank, and you have to exercise in a number of different roles and evolutions, leadership, of essentially of peers. So what was that like for you, and what was toughest for you at Ranger School?
Oh, like everyone who's been through Ranger School, you realize it's hard, and that same lesson that I talked about West Point being a chronic challenge.
Mhm.
Ranger School was the same way. Everyone goes to Ranger School completely fit, ready to go, physically ready for whatever they're going to throw at you. Now, of course, with the lack of sleep and lack of food and the exercise, that is all gone within a week. But it's the mental agility, it's the mental strength that it really. I underestimated the need for that before going there, and realized that you have to be in it for the long haul. You have to be able to persevere through some tough situations for day after day after day without an end in sight.
Yeah, one of the things that struck me was just the importance of intestinal fortitude, like of the gut check, because you could see people that are super fit, as you indicated, or muscular, kind of going in, and you think that, well, these guys have got it, and sometimes you take away someone's food and sleep, and they can become different people as they start to satisfy that basic rung of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, no, you see people crumble there. I tell you, I had a warn. My dad warned me before I went to Ranger School that you have to be ready for them to throw these mental twists at you, like extend just when you think you're done with this massive long march with carrying your backpacks. You get back, you think you're all done, and then they tell you need to go 5 more miles, and it's that messing with your mind in that regard that can be really tough to take when you're tired and hungry and exhausted and just fed up. And but expecting that, I think, is helpful.
Yeah, there's a premium on remaining resilient, right, through that chronic challenge. Are there particular strategies that you've leveraged over the years to remain resilient through challenge and setback and adversity?
Only ones that I've leveraged well, or ones that I've leveraged poorly. We've all.
Let's focus on the ones you've done well.
Oh, well, that's a much shorter list. No, of course, you just learn. You have to learn about yourself. You have to learn about others. You have to be more patient. I'm not a particularly patient person by nature, and I've had to learn to be patient with myself, and to really plan things out for the long haul. Plan for the marathon out there as you go through difficult circumstances.
hmm what about routines? Are there, people talk about components of resilience in terms of physical well-being, mental well-being, spiritual well-being, having a sense of meaning and purpose, social relationships, a social tap code that Admiral Stockdale referred to when he was in the Hanoi Hilton for 7 years. Do you have any like hacks or routines that help to kind of keep you going and adaptable? And
For me, Kumar, it really is just having a routine. I'm very much a creature of habit. I wake up at the same time every morning. I do I have the same, I get a coffee. I check out email. I check out the news. I do the same workout. I have the exact same breakfast smoothie every single day. I have my to-do list, which I go through, which for me is just, it's very soothing to know that everything I have to do is on a to-do list. So I can look at my to-do list, I can prioritize, and I can, start getting after the day. So for me, a routine is very reassuring. I know that everyone's different, and I've learned that you need to have your routine that works for you, and that my routine is not going to work for you. But I will just tell you that my routine works for me, and that's what I've found some comfort and solace in knowing that I do the same thing each day, and it's a somewhat predictable outcome.
Yeah, I like what you said in terms of just kind of the how it's got to be unique and personal to the individual. It's got to fit your own hand like a glove in terms of whatever
Yeah.
your situation in life is. Well, let's talk about like mentoring and who influenced you the most as a leader.
There are a lot of fantastic leaders. Well, of course, we've all been influenced by great leaders and some, in other cases, not so great leaders, but you can learn good things from all of them. I had one leader when I was a young lieutenant, a young officer. I was probably 24 years old, who was just a superb leader. His name was Major Tom Young. And he just, for me, he was the person that really helped demonstrate what a great leadership, strong leadership looked like.
What give me some examples of that? What really stands out in terms of what he modeled?
Do you mind if I just tell you a story about him?
Yeah, please, please.
Okay, well, I was in an aviation unit when I first graduated from West Point and went to flight school and reported to my first unit. I was a pilot in Germany. And I was there for probably a year when we got this new officer in our battalion. So our battalion has probably 500 people and 50 helicopters. But we got this new Major Tom Young. That's this guy I'm talking about. He was the number two for our battalion. And he was coming from a really famous aviation unit. And I'll say that our unit in Germany was probably just an average, mediocre, regular unit. But he was coming from a really elite outfit. He got there, and probably a month after he got there, he announced that he wanted to do a major operation with all 50 helicopters, a huge operation at one time. And I think everyone was initially a little skeptical. But he said, don't worry, we're not going to do this all at once. We're going to take about 6 months to train to do this. And I've done some research, and this will be the biggest helicopter operation ever done in Europe. And so he kind of set this goal out there. There's a little ambitious for all of us, but everyone got on board and we set up a training plan. And for 6 months, each month, we'd do a little more complex of an operation. We'd add more helicopters, add more stops, and we're working our way up to it. I was one of his assistants who was helping him plan this thing. And I'll tell you that about 2 weeks before this operation was supposed to happen, he came to me and said, Lieutenant, I want you to give the air mission brief for this operation. Now, let me pause for a second and say that the air mission brief is a big deal. And it's normally, in a case like this, it would be done by the colonel, especially for an operation of this size. Maybe he as the major would do it, but it's not going to be done by a lieutenant. And I was like, are you sure? And he said, yep, you're going to do it. But don't worry, we're going to do a rehearsal next week to make sure you're ready. So, okay. So I go and I'm flattered that he is thinking I might be able to do this, but also very nervous. So I just work and study and practice. I learn every single detail about this operation, and I plan and prepare. And so a week before the operation,
Okay, so let me just ask you, what kind of time investment was that to master that all the intricacies and the details?
I would say it would probably took up half of my work time for that week leading up to it.
Right,
So
right,
like
yeah.
significant investment of time.
Yeah.
Like I really wanted to get this right. And so I went in standing in front of him to do my rehearsal, and I went through every single detail, every flight route, every frequency we're going to call in on, every contingency. If a helicopter goes down, we're going to do this. If we have maintenance problems, we're going to do this. If we run out of gas, we'll do this. We have a backup gas station for the helicopters over here. Every single detail, every contingency, and I was ready. So I went through it all with them. And when I got to the end of it, like I knew I had nailed it. You know when you just know you've nailed it? And he looked at me and he said, that was terrible. And I was crushed. I was really, when I realized he was serious, I was really crushed. And he said, listen, he said, I can tell you've worked hard. I know you know your stuff. He said, but you have to keep your audience in mind. You know this mission inside and out, but your audience is just hearing this for the first time. He said, so you've got to go through the mission from A to Z the way you want the mission to go if everything goes perfectly. Then and only then, when they understand how things are supposed to work, do you go back and start working through the contingencies, the what ifs, the helicopter crashes or the running out of gas or the lost frequencies. And as soon as he said that, it made perfect sense to me. And so I went back, I redid the whole presentation according to his plan. The presentation went fine. The operation went fine the following week. So everything went fine. But for me, that is just, I learned so many lessons over the course of that operation with Tom Young. First and foremost, a leader has to have a vision and be able to articulate that vision. And he set this vision that seemed, really high, but it was very clear, the biggest operation that's ever been done in Europe. So he sets that out there. We go out there, we do that. The second thing I'll say is that you have to empower your teammates, especially your junior teammates. And he did that. He let a lieutenant do something that a lieutenant had no business doing. And I certainly didn't have, as evidenced by my performance on that first rehearsal. And then he came in and he provides brutally honest feedback. We all know as bosses, that's hard to do. It's easy to tell people they're doing a great job. It's hard to tell people they're not doing well, but it's important if you really want to help them get to the next level out there. The other thing I'll say is the other message that I learned was you got to tailor your message, tailor your briefing to the audience. Mm-hmm. And that was painfully obvious to me there, but that came back to that later in life. And then finally, the last thing on here is the importance of rehearsals. Practice makes perfect. We all know that. We've heard that our entire lives, but it really demonstrated the importance of a rehearsal to me.
So those are some key points. And what is intriguing to me is you're serving in an aviation unit, but at some point you make a decision to go to law school and then become a military prosecutor. So how do those lessons translate into an entirely different field? How did Major Tom's influence, what did you carry from that into this new endeavor?
I think almost all of those lessons carry forward. For me, most of them translate very well into any leadership role that you have. After law school, I became a criminal prosecutor, and there's not a single time that I was going in front of a jury that I didn't stop and say, "Hey, wait, listen, I've been dealing with this case, studying this case for months now, leading up to the prosecution, but that jury is about to hear what I'm going to say for the very first time. And I've got to keep that in mind and tell a very clear story for them that is different than the perspective that I have at this point." And so that's just one example of it, but really all of these leadership lessons, I think, carry over into just not only what I've done as an attorney, but what just about any leader out there can do.
Well, let me ask you, as far as, because you talked about the brutal and candid and direct feedback he gave you, and you comment, and it's true how difficult it can be to be direct with folks and give them the feedback they need to hear. How has that played out in your, as a lawyer, as a military lawyer, and as a leader of lawyers? Because you not only you functioned as a first line prosecutor, but then went on to lead at the top levels of the JAG Corps. So,
lawyers are with the exception of me, they tend to be really smart people. They've pushed themselves, they've succeeded, and they tend to think fairly highly of themselves. So there's a lot of self-confidence out there among most lawyers. Not a group that just really needing a lot of self-validation. Mm-hmm. So they don't always take criticism well. And so but I think it's important that we all know that we can do better. And so you don't want to be unnecessarily brutal, but that sort of honesty and delivered in a way that helps them realize that they can do better. I think we all benefit from that. I know I did, and I think most other people are similar in that regard.
Yeah. What about, I want to kind of, JSOC, your role as it's probably not intuitive to folks in terms of the role of lawyers at JSOC. And for those in the audience that aren't as familiar with Joint Special Operations Command, they include our special operations forces that execute missions around the world. And so what could you share with us about your specific role at JSOC?
My role was just to serve as the legal advisor there. That's nothing too crazily interesting about my role there, but I will tell you, for me, it was very formative. I loved the experience there for two reasons mainly. The first of all is just the quality and caliber of the people you're with. It really is the finest organization that I can imagine serving in, because they can pick and choose the finest personnel officer from the entire Department of Defense and say, we're going to pick this person from the Navy because she is the best at that. And then they find the finest intelligence officers and intelligence NCOs. And obviously they have the finest special operators that exist anywhere in the world. You put together a team of people that are all the very best at what they do, And it's really inspiring. It's humbling, but it pushes everyone. Like you're like, I just to keep up, I'm gonna have to go all out just to make sure I don't make a fool of myself here in my role. And you do the best that you can. So it's inspiring to work with people who are so very good at what they do. The other thing that I learned there is just the push for innovation, a real open-mindedness to do things differently. And there's like a cultural indoctrination when you get there, but I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean in a good way, where they say, listen, we are open to everything. In the meetings, they said normally we're all from the military where people are particularly rank conscious, but we don't want anyone of any rank to be stifled just because of the rank. Everyone has a voice, no matter what rank you are, and we want you to speak up. We want to hear your ideas. In fact, the people at the closest to the problems, often the lower ranking folks, have better solutions to problems.
Yeah.
And
Amen.
they need to have a voice. We can't just say, hey, listen, you're just a sergeant. You can't possibly have the best idea in the room when the room is filled with colonels and Navy captains. But the truth is, yes, they can, and they often do. And it's just great to see an organization that embraces giving everyone a voice and just says, listen, we will never tolerate, we're going to do this because this is the way we've already always done it. Now, if we say we've always done it this way because it's a good idea, well, that's different. And so just seeing a fresh mindset for me was great. I learned a lot from all the people around me there.
When you talk about, like, you have the finest representatives of their functional areas or whatever coming together in a high-performing team, Patrick Lencioni talks about this the stages of a high-performing team, and you've got trust as a foundation, you've got constructive conflict, constructive, right? You've got commitment. Everyone's voice should be heard, but once a decision's made, everyone needs to rally around that decision. But what I'm really intrigued by is the next step is peer-to-peer accountability. And I think in a lot of high-performing organizations, and this gets back to your earlier comment on feedback, you have strong peer-to-peer accountability because you want to measure up. You don't want to let the teammates down. And there can also be really kind of candid lateral discussion about, hey, you didn't make the mark that time. You got to step up next time. I'm just curious whether you saw that as well.
I absolutely did. And you said exactly what I was going to say. It's like, you don't want to let people down. You see this, and it's not just in the elite organizations. You see this as kind of the bond that keeps almost every military organization, especially our warfighting units, together. It's that desire to not let your buddy down. He or she deserves the very best that you have, and they will in turn give that to you. And that really, I agree with you. It's a mark of a high-performing organization.
Yeah. One more question on special operations. What do you think? Because it gets a lot of attention more recently, right? I mean, in terms of Navy SEALs and other Tier 1 units that operate out there. What would you say is the biggest misconception, as someone who's been inside of JSOC, about special operations?
I would say that it's a flawless organization. And that's the misconception. Everyone has shortcomings, but if you're working in that high-performing team, you can help make up for the shortcomings of each other. If you can recognize your shortcomings or the shortcomings of others, you can step in and fill in the gap and help each other out. And so it's not like it's a team of everyone who's perfect, because no one is perfect. We know that. And so these ideas that everyone's going to be perfect, it's not. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. I want to turn a little bit to your efforts in, you spoke about innovation as part of JSOC, but also you oversee kind of the legal and ethical implications of emerging technologies. I'd like to ask you specifically about artificial intelligence. How is it envisioned, or how is it used in the Department of Defense? And what are the challenges around how it's deployed?
That's a really good question. I was at a conference this morning with, and the key speaker was the 4-star General Mike Murray, who's in charge of the Army Futures Command, a really innovative, pioneering leader of an organization that's the same way. And the truth is, AI has the power to change a lot of what we think about warfare. So it can really alter. If you have autonomous weapons systems that can detect and select and engage targets by themselves, that can radically change warfare of the future. And if done right, it can be a positive change. It can actually make, in my view, warfare more humane. So there's a lot of focus on this idea of killer robots. Related to that is we are a massive bureaucracy. The Department of Defense, and that's no surprise to most of the people here in the Washington, D.C. area. 3 million people in the Department of Defense, largest employer in America. But we have a lot of systems in place, and there's room for efficiency. And AI and streamlining and automating a lot of systems can really improve I would say not the frontline stuff, but the back room stuff of what the military does. So I think to answer your first question, AI and just autonomous systems overall can really streamline everything that we do across the Pentagon. The challenges, I think, are that people are concerned about runaway weapons. They're concerned about Terminators. Every science fiction novel or movie ever written or made has these robots turning on their creators, and society is doomed. So there are concerns. We have to be very legal and ethical in the way that we build them. We have to go out there and make sure that we have fail-safe systems. We have ways to ensure that we can turn these things off if they start to run away. Ways to prevent unanticipated escalation. There's a story out there of where they were using these AI systems on stock market trading for micro trades. Mm-hmm. And there were several stock market crashes. They called them flash crashes, where those systems started outbidding one another just in real time, and it ran out of control. So if you can have a flash crash of the stock market, you don't want to have a flash war created that wasn't intentional. That would be devastating. And so you really need to have the best and brightest focused on this. And so there were some in industry out there who were concerned about the potential impacts of using this technology in the military, which makes sense. But we really need them to partner with us to make sure that we are all doing the best that we can from a capability standpoint to make sure we don't have those problems. And also like-minded people who are ethically concerned, making sure that we have the right safeguards in place.
So I imagine this is an area where you must engage in frequent and regular contact with the private sector. And do you find that there's a consensus among leaders in terms of the left and right limits of how this is channeled and harnessed?
I think there's a growing consensus in that area. I think, again, there was initial concern that this was just if used in warfare, this could just be unleashed. Here in the United States, I believe we are gaining that consensus with industry and with academia. There's been a lot of outreach with the Pentagon. They've established what I call an embassy in Silicon Valley. It's the Defense Innovation Unit, but I think it's an embassy out there to help bridge the gap. It's really doing great things. Others are doing that. And here in the United States, I think we've achieved that. Globally, I think there's still a lot of concern. I think there are concerns that other nations out there aren't quite as committed to either the law or ethics when it comes to AI, just because of the tremendous potential. And so there are concerns about whether those nations will follow the rules.
So it still seems kind of fuzzy to me, right? As I'm sure it does to a lot of people. If you were to paint a vivid picture of what it would look like as far as being leveraged and empowering a battle leader 15 years, 10 years from now, whatever it is, what would it look like? Is there like a picture you can paint in terms of how it would integrate into a unit of human beings that are executing a mission downrange?
Yeah, I think if I were to paint kind of three different changes, one would be a better vision of what's going on. There are so many connect the dots type activities that are required in battle to figure out what is going on in the battlefield. Everyone understands the chaos of war as sort of a traditional fixture in any combat situation. Because of AI's capability to go out there and synthesize a lot of data and try to connect the dots on that and put it together and then convey it more clearly, there's hope that there would be a better picture of what's going on and where, and that could lead to hopefully something like less civilian casualties,
right?
A less inhumane endeavor, because war is just an inherently ugly thing. But if we can cut out the unnecessary pain to non-combatants, I think that's a good thing. Second area is on the actual targeting. I still think we need to have humans making some of the key decisions, but I think that can be aided and sped up by some of these machines that are helping detect, using facial recognition technology, saying, hey, I think we've detected this person who is an enemy commander who is a potential target, and then the person can verify that and say, yes, go. And that can be done faster and more efficiently than would have been done by humans, just intelligence analysts by themselves. And then the third area is the far less sexy area, but I think is important, is the behind the scenes stuff that I mentioned before. Smart maintenance is one of those areas, that if a lot of the cars nowadays will monitor your driving habits, monitor your repairs, your oil changes, and the same for all the other drivers that are out there, compare that data and tell you exactly when to change your oil to optimize the time. That sort of thing can save billions across the Pentagon as we apply it to ships, airplanes, and trucks.
Yeah, that's an exciting future. It'll be interesting to see how much is it already here? I mean, you talked about the vehicle issue, but in DoD, how much is it kind of already?
It is
a reality.
At the beginning stages, it's everywhere. We are probably the world's biggest user of AI. We have like 1,000 formal AI programs. Very few of them are dealing with weapons, actually. But the truth is, we're building into everything. So self-driving supply trucks. A lot of times, there's no need to put a driver in that, making this run from Baghdad to Mosul in Iraq, where you're likely to get bombed. Driverless trucks in some cases for supply. But that sort of technology is being infused everywhere. Our court reporters are using voice recognition technology to create their records of trial. We use it in our litigation for Army litigators. But really, it's infused in every little area and it's growing. And it's not just the military. I think corporate America and most major organizations across the country are trying to use it to streamline their processes and just cut costs and be more efficient.
Yeah. Well, let's come up to like the current day. And this has to do with kind of the leadership challenges associated with, you talked about the self-confidence of lawyers. When I was a deputy assistant secretary at DHS, in the organization that I was essentially functioning as the COO of, we had about 1,200 attorneys. What do you see as unique factors in inspiring and leading a large cadre of attorneys?
Well, I think any leader has to it's the responsibility of the leader to tailor the leadership style and leadership approach to the organization that you're leading. And when you're leading lawyers, you're leading people who are intelligent, they're capable, they're driven, they want to succeed, and what they need and deserve are the tools and resources in order to succeed. Everyone wants to be doing meaningful work. It's just like, it's human nature. You can find exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, we want to be doing legitimate work. We want the tools to do it. We want to be appreciated and recognized for the work that we're doing. And these are just natural human things that even lawyers fall prey to these human tendencies. I'll tell you, when I first decided to go to law school, I told my mother that I was going to law school, and she, without batting an eye and totally seriously, looked at me and said, "You want to be a lawyer? I thought we raised you better than that." I think she's come around a little bit now, but the truth is, lawyers are fantastic, and they really are easy to lead because of their natural drive and willingness and desire to get stuff done. But like everybody, they need the tools, they need the resources, they need the setup, and we all have to work together to accomplish things. Very, very few things in the law can you just go out there on your own and operate as a lone operator and get something done. We're doing stuff as part of a team. And teamwork, it has certain dynamics that go along with it. And if you're a leader of that team, you need to understand human nature and try to lead that team effectively.
Do you find that a team of lawyers are, because I hadn't been to law school, but my understanding is there's a great emphasis on critical thinking. I would imagine it puts more of a premium on having to potentially explain or lay out why a certain course of action is being pursued versus another. I'm just curious as to whether that's something that you've detected a difference in from any other organization you've led.
I've been for the past 25 years, I've been exclusively in legal organizations, but you're right. That characterization is absolutely correct. It's the critical thinking that I think allow a lawyer on a staff, whether you're on a staff of a legal command, or I should say a staff of a military command, or whether you're a corporate counsel, a corporation, whether you're a law firm advising clients, that sort of critical thinking, I think is helpful to the clients. That's what we owe our clients. So very much a central aspect of what lawyers do for their clients.
Yeah. Well, in this role, what excites you the most about your responsibilities?
For me, I love the ability to get out and see people. I see these organizational charts out there, Kumar, and they, in the military, the military loves hierarchy. The military loves these organizational charts, and they always have a bunch of people at the bottom, and they have some general at the top. And I think it's misleading because it suggests that the person at the top is the most important. I would flip that thing over and say it's the people in the trenches. It's the people trying the cases. It's the paralegal out there at a forward battalion. It's the attorney who is really out there giving advice directly to the clients that are the most important. And all of the rest of us support that person. And so for me, when I can get out there to the front lines of the legal community and talk to those lawyers that are actually sitting, the ones that are in court, arguing the cases, making a difference for their clients out there, that is satisfying because it reminds me what my role is, overseeing and supporting those attorneys and those paralegals out there. So the furthest I can get forward to see them is what excites me.
I love that you said that. I mean, that's the classic servant leader model, right? Is to flip that pyramid upside down, and now everyone's looking up to the people that are actually encountering the daily challenges and frustrations, and are, as you indicated earlier, the best ones situated to innovate and figure out how to respond to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So, what most frustrates you about this role?
I did talk about the Pentagon being a bureaucracy with 3 million people. And, at the headquarters, we have some really fantastic processes in place to ensure that all stakeholders have an opportunity to provide relevant and appropriate input. What that means is that things often are slow in a bureaucracy. And I told you, I confessed, I'm not a very patient person. So it's that slowness of a large organization that I and many other people find a little frustrating at times. I understand the importance and the reason we have that. And overall, I would say that does more good than harm, but it still can be frustrating on some days.
So what do you say to those that say it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission? I mean, particularly as a lawyer, right? I would think because you look at risk in different ways, not just operational, right? I mean, so I'm curious about that.
Well, we learned that early on, the importance of initiative, and I've always been one that I forgive initiative. But the truth is, it depends on the circumstances. There are some times where you're like, if you're going to ask forgiveness later for that, you're going to need a good defense attorney because you just really screwed up bad on something that matters a lot. So on some decisions, I'd say that's a terrible approach. On others, I'd say it's exactly the right approach. So I hate to do a cookie cutter, one size fits all type answer and say that it depends. How's that for a lawyer answer?
Met T. Yeah. Well, your responsibilities also include oversight of diversity and inclusion, which has become increasingly prominent in recent years. How do you ensure that program is lifted up, that you signal its importance, and it's not something that's just handled as a finger drill, or just how do you invest people in really honoring and making it come alive in your organization?
I'm glad you asked about that because we have long believed in the importance of diversity in our legal team. The legal community as a whole does not do a very good job of reflecting society's makeup. But we in the Army's legal community, we want to make sure that we are at least doing a great job of reflecting the legal community within us. And we do a fantastic job of that. We've always emphasized that. We've always put a premium on it. We've always assigned one of our generals. We only have 5 generals on the Army's legal team. One of the 5 is aligned with each one of the minority bar associations out there. We're aligned, and we've had a long-standing relationship with them. And it's great. It's a great opportunity to get these fantastic attorneys that are diverse and represent different viewpoints into the JAG course where they can really jump in and start trying cases and practicing law much sooner than they would in a law firm setting or in a corporate counsel setting. We can give them leadership and lawyering opportunities that you just can't get elsewhere. We don't offer the same salaries, mind you, but we offer meaningful legal work that's pretty phenomenal. And we've also long recognized the value of diverse perspectives. It's been said, like, if everyone thinks the same way you do, then everyone else is unnecessary. Yeah. So having different perspectives and the diversity that comes with that just helps the organization be stronger. What I will say is, as a result of this past year, it's actually been helpful to us because it's shed some light on how we've been doing some things for a while. It's allowed us to get the resources to expand our program. We just added our first full-time diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. We have a colonel who's coming as currently sitting as one of the judges on our Court of Appeals, and he is taking the helm and leading this organization full-time from here going forward. And that's just another great step in the right direction.
Oh, wow, that's excellent. We're coming down to the end. If you were going to boil down your leadership philosophy to 3 essentials, what would they be?
Okay, 3 essentials. Remember, we were taught that the simplest basic leadership principles when we were brand new into the military, they taught us you have to do 2 things. You have to take care of your people and you have to accomplish your mission. I still believe in the power of those. And there's often a tension. You can't do everything all the time and it works out. You'll burn out. Sometimes you have to surge and really take care of somebody. Other times you have to kind of focus on the mission. Like, if you're an accountant and it's tax season, it's not a great time for you to be letting folks go on vacation. And now's the time you buckle down. We'll take the vacation in the fall. But those 2 things I'd say are 1 and 2. The third thing I'd say is have fun. Like, I sometimes have people come to me and ask me about career advice, and I say, you should do exactly what you want to do, because that is a guaranteed win. And if you're having fun, you're likely to be doing good work because you like what you're doing. And that is just win-win overall. Kumar, can I add a number 4? I just thought of one other thing.
Add a number 4 for sure. It's a bonus.
Only a lawyer would say something like that. Listen, there's one other rule that we have, and I've talked about this one. It says a basic leadership principle: don't be a jerk. Mm-hmm. But for leaders, it's different. It goes beyond that. It's don't tolerate a jerk in an organization. Because it's so easy to say, man, he does really good work, or she's good at what she does. And you just kind of turn a blind eye to the fact that someone is a jerk. But the way I see it is, despite the great work that they're doing, if someone's a jerk, they're going to be a poison in a unit, and they're going to cause more harm and disruption to the rest of the team than is worth the goodness. So you've got to either turn that jerky behavior around or get rid of that person, because they've got no place in an organization that operates as a team.
Yeah, then you own it if it's happening in front of you and you're doing nothing to stop it.
Absolutely.
And then even on a more, I like your point there, because I think even on a more subtle level, something that's probably pretty common is gossip. Saying making detracting comments about coworkers. All of that can be really corrosive.
Yeah,
so I really appreciate what you're saying, and I also it really resonates when you talk about have fun, because again, leadership is about influence, and if you're having fun and you're deriving a sense of reward from it, it's infectious.
I agree.
People can't help
it. It's contagious. Good attitudes are contagious, but bad attitudes are just as contagious.
Yeah.
So you make a difference.
Yeah. Well, what did you believe at the beginning of your career that you feel differently about today?
I would say at the beginning of my career, I assumed that everyone saw things the way I do. And now I know that is so far from the truth. We talked a little bit about diverse perspectives, diverse experiences, different backgrounds. And I've learned that you have to look at things from other people's perspectives. You have to see things through their eyes, especially if you're going to lead them. They might not have the same exact desires, the same influences that you do. And as a leader, it's your responsibility to see what is it that drives them. And I've really gained a tremendous appreciation for looking at things through the eyes of others.
That comment resonates on so many levels, right? I mean, it's in the not being a jerk and demonstrating high emotional intelligence, but also from the standpoint of diversity, equity, and inclusion, being able to empathize with folks that are, in a majority culture, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be. I mean, they don't feel comfortable being their authentic self. And being able, I think, to be attuned and to be able to recognize and pick up on that and keep working towards promoting team belonging.
Oh, I love
Yeah,
that. I think that's great. I totally agree.
yeah. Well, where can our listeners learn more about you and your organization?
GoArmyJag.com.
Okay, go Army
Seriously,
Jack. I didn't know there was a special website for that.
yeah, no, I would say young lawyers or law students out there, our whole team is on there. We have some unique roles out there. It's a lot of fun. I am here, 30 years after I thought I'd be here because I'm still having fun. It's an absolute blast. I'm a little embarrassed that you knew me at age 17, Kumar. So you knew that earlier, younger self, but hopefully you would see a bit of a transformation.
Absolutely. Well, what's really interesting about that is because we haven't seen each other. I mean, the last time we saw each other, we were commenting before the interview was that 20 years ago or so? I don't know.
I think it was. Oh, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably
So
20 years ago.
it's really it's so interesting. Your point, especially when we go to our reunions or things like that, you have the snapshot of what we were like as cadets, and it's so I don't know. There's just something about it to see, especially you all that have stayed in the military and have continued to serve, and you're now, general officers. It's really quite inspirational. I really want to thank you for sharing your lessons learned during a very varied and career filled with diverse assignments in service to our country. I can't tell you how cool it is to see how you and our other classmates have gone on to serve our nation in significant roles of substantial impact. So thank you, Pat, for your service. Thank you for making your time available today to share your thoughts, your perspectives with our audience. And we definitely need to get together and see each other in the flesh here soon.
I completely agree, Kumar. I'll tell you, it's just as fantastic to see you so successful, a CEO in that suit, looking great, sounding great. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
All righty. Take care.
You too. Take care.